don't forget, it ain't the first 48 with 60 minutes.
Cover the king, best not miss. Even the score now, we need to score now. Back on that wall, when you hear that call, you know it's going down. We play from beginning to ending, you know how we finish. Turn to the bank, gotta handle our business. We need the ball, so it's time to go get it. Play with your heart when you hit, make it feel it. You know I'm with. You come to the bank and get out of line, we sending a blitz. Said who you with? You know I'm with. That purple and black, and when we attack, you know what it is.
You're now locked into Count Zone 32.
Skeleton Crew tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a spin-off episode of the Zone 32 podcast. Because you got me, motherfucking Jake, and you got motherfucking BT over here. We got time. This is the fucking off-season. Say what's up to the people, BT.
First off, from Drew, fuck you. He didn't actually say that, but in the spirit, we've got to follow the routine, man. We got to follow the routine. But
that's fine. His boo-boo ass hockey team can't even beat the fucking Sharks. The hell's wrong with them? I don't care that they traded fucking. Actually, no, Bergeron retired, but I don't care that they traded Marchand and everyone else. You still got Pasta. How the fuck do you lose to the Sharks? The fucking that's like losing to the 0-16 Cleveland Browns. 2018, 2019. Last year they were relevant was the last year the Bruins went to the Stanley Cup and lost that Game 7 to Jordan Binnington and the fucking Blues. So yeah, fuck Drew. Drew's fat, big old titties, obesity epidemic, fucking big tits McGrits, fucking tits of a 40-year-old woman. All
right.
I'll stop. That's cold. Like Drew's all right.
He's not here to defend himself and tell you to fuck off.
That is true. That is true. Either way, that would be the episode because there ain't that much to talk about other than Ravens and John Harbaugh have agreed to not let him sit in a lame duck year, and Steve Bisciotti's paid him a 3-year extension. Monetary details of it, don't know. Don't particularly care, but he's here for another 3 years. So BT. Here we go again. The Harbaugh haters will be real pissed.
I mean,
real pissed.
I mean, with all the discord we've already seen so far with the signing and with the presser that we've already seen, everyone's pissed already. I mean, because they were expecting him to sit as a lame duck and or get fired and just go into the front office or something. But with that being said, I mean, everyone in our crew expected John Harbaugh to come back. It was just, why are we acting like the way we are acting?
Right.
And I think it was just because we finally saw it firsthand. We all wanted to be proven wrong, but we were proven right. And so now within this next 4-ish years, we can see if he's ready to take a step down and move into that other role, or if he is ready just to call it quits.
Yeah, that's the truth. I mean, honestly, you could do a lot worse than him. I mean, he has his flaws, he has his issues, just as every coach does. Andy Reid still doesn't know clock management, and he's a fucking 3-time Super Bowl winner now. So hey, could always be worse. Could always be worse. Like, I mean, he and Mike Tomlin both have this problem now. Mike Tomlin's getting the media heat because hasn't won a playoff game since 2017 when they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, the second to last year with Alex Smith. So, I mean, it's justifiable. So, I mean, I get it. That being said, I mean, you could do worse. You could definitely do worse than John Harbaugh. He's not what's I'm looking for. He ain't the best coach in the league, but he's far from the worst. Like I'd be willing to call him at this stage based off of pedigree, wins, and everything in his Super Bowl ring, somewhere in the 5 to 10 range. later half of it, but probably around there. Same thing with Mike Tomlin. Because otherwise, realistically, the only other coaches with a better pedigree in the league currently, probably Andy Reid and Sean McVay, was the only active coach with Super Bowl rings. Mike McCarthy got fired. He's gone now, so
Yeah, no,
not anymore.
And he is, if I saw correctly, he is sitting out for the 2025 season.
Yep.
To
Yes, he
do
is.
whatever he needs to do and mull things over or try to get a job somewhere else. But John Harbaugh is, at this point in his career, middle of the pack. He's not bad compared to into the aspect of all 32 teams. He's somewhere in the middle. I would say probably upper middle, but that's just my opinion, whatever the fuck that's worth.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, you could just be as dumb as the rest of the coaching staff. Like, I don't know, some of the, let's just take example, the, all the Jaguars coaches and
Yep.
teams out
Fucking Doug Peters.
Josh McDaniels from
Yeah.
when he was with the Raiders and the Broncos. There's
Or
a
Antonio Pierce before he got let go. Like there's you can do a lot worse, and any of these bottom feeder franchises would pay an arm and a leg to get him to come over there and coach up their team if he were to ever be fired. Wouldn't take him long to find another job. He'd have to pick up the litter effectively. Same thing with
absolutely.
Tomlin.
You have all these teams willing to write a blank check to John Harbaugh, to Mike Tomlin, just to be like, hey, you've got this massive amount of experience. You can build a team. You can do this, do that. And
You've won games. You've been a consistent contender. Now, who gets the most credit for that? I mean, that's up to debate. I mean, he's been a part of that, so a team and a fan base could sit there and convince themselves, yeah, he's the missing piece that we need that can really change our culture around. Because I firmly believe this: had he been fired from here at the end of the 2018 season, had they mutually parted ways, he'd probably be the coach of the Cleveland Browns right now.
probably. Oh, I
That
bet you.
That was his hometown team, and they let go of Hugh Jackson. What's his face? Greg Williams was the interim dude, and then they brought in Freddie Kitchens for a year and promoted him, had him be the head coach.
Well, Greg
all things
Williams and
considered-
Freddie Kitchens were on the same staff together.
Yeah, exactly. And instead of Williams getting the job, Kitchens got the job instead. Because the trend in the league is find your offensive coordinator and make him a head coach so you can develop a quarterback. Which that's the thinking. Whether it's
See,
right or wrong, I mean,
thinking back to that season, yes, I know they're a division rival and whatnot, but looking back, Cleveland should have kept Kitchens where they were and hired Greg Williams full time. But
be
that's
interesting.
because he lit a fire under
He did.
Cleveland when Hugh Jackson got fired. Williams lit a fire under that team's ass, and they started winning games.
They did. And it's funny, they actually wound up making the right pick in that draft because they got criticized for taking Denzel Ward at 4 instead of Bradley Chubb. The conventional wisdom, a lot of draft analysts were take Bradley Chubb and pair him up with Myles Garrett when Greg Williams wanted Ward because he was a better fit for his defensive scheme and so he could cover Antonio Brown. Turns out that wound up being a really good pick.
Mm-hmm.
But
Now,
that
don't
being
get me
said,
wrong. That being said, I mean, he's granted Denzel Ward is starting to get older and the league is starting to take its toll on him, but he's still a damn good DB.
Yes, he is. He's still a CB1. He's not the dude that was shutting people down in 2022 and 2023, but he's still very good.
But that's the kind of level that John Harbaugh means to the league.
Yep. Yeah, he's still very highly regarded amongst his peers.
Which, don't get me wrong, I hate his game management skills.
Yes.
And how he
Grant is totally right in that when things aren't going well, he can't step in and take over a specific coordinator job. He's never been an offensive coordinator. He's never been a defensive coordinator. Special teams he's been able to do because he did it for a long time, but he hasn't. He's as hands off and as much of a CEO head coach as there is in the league. But nonetheless, I mean, he has a fair point on that. That being said, I mean,
why do you think we had what was his or Jerry? I think it was Rossberg.
Yep,
Ross. But that's why he had him as assistant head coach and game manager for so long, because John Harbaugh literally is CEO. He knows how to delegate.
Yep.
And if you have someone that can delegate and delegate well, you're just basically setting up meetings and being a motivational speaker and having the final say.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And no, you're absolutely right on that, BT. So, I mean, long story short, short story long, you can do a lot worse than Sean Harbaugh. If he was out of here, you'd find a job really quickly. That's not to say that's not necessarily a good reason to keep him, but it's also one of those things where we could be in a much worse situation as Ravens fans. The Raiders are hilariously just bad. Like City of Oakland is down horrible. You lose the Warriors across the Bay Bridge to San Francisco, where you could step in a homeless dude's dookie. Then you got the Raiders who abandoned you, and all they wanted was a stadium. And the A's wanted a ballpark. That being said, you're trying to give them a ballpark, and they were just going to leave on anyway. So realistically, you put all your all your eggs in one basket on the one horse that was primed to leave you anyway, and now you have nothing but heroin needles in the streets and feces. There's nothing redeeming about the city of Oakland. Like that. Now the slogan's got to be "Welcome to Oakland." Why did you come here? What's wrong with you? We have nothing.
And that's why, I mean, credit to Marshawn Lynch for trying to do everything he could to, keep something in Oakland and also keeping,
like Oakland's basically Stockton with better weather. Like Oakland's basically Stockton with better weather at this point.
Why are you right?
Because I live out here. I've seen it.
I know. It's just one of those things where at this point in time, I don't want you to be right.
I understand, but hey.
But it's when you have organizations that are willing to do whatever they can just to make a buck, as soon as a good small market team decides, oh gosh, this guy in here.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We did Naldo. Will and Drew are gone.
Naldo, get out of here. But
Drew is
preoccupied probably with his family, and Will is
Drew did a meetup with that gay dude that likes to get on here and say gay things on the YouTube.
What, Tom P?
No, not Tom P. Like that one dude that does all the sexually explicit messages in the chat. He and Drew had a meetup.
Oh, Raul. That's
right. They had a meetup. That's why Drew's not here.
Raul finally got his wish.
That's right. I don't know the context, and I'm not going to repeat it, but know that they're experiencing a time together right now. That's why Drew's not here. And flags for Drew in the NPM chat.
Yes, but as far as the rest of them, Grant, obviously he's doing his his football thing with spring practices. And
he's getting ready to be a roadie for Oliver Anthony Music. He's gonna help him on the road and help.
And he's got to. And then after that, he's got to get ready to go to OTAs and training camp.
That's right, because he has to be the next. He has to be the next Brooks Reed.
Yes.
He's going to be the next Brooks Reed, but he's going to be a 38, 39-year-old pass rusher coming off the edge for the Atlanta Falcons. That is the word through the street.
I
Apparently
forget what Will's doing.
Oh, Will's just fucking off. He's doing whatever. It's kind of funny. Like I did a double take the other day because I feel like I said this to him, but I feel like Will looks like, if you ever heard of a Sacramento hardcore band called Hoods, I feel like his face is very similar to Mikey Hood's face. And
Yes.
their faces are very similar, so I think he's just getting ready to go tour with Hoods because my cousin told me that. That's what he said because he plays with Hoods. So Will is getting ready to do vocals for Hoods.
And Trippy has that net zero.
Yep. Trippy has Starlink, and it's on the worst kind of megabits connection. Trippy has Starlink.
So this is how we got here. Just the two of us tonight.
It's exactly right. This is a spin-off episode, Naldo.
It's not necessarily spin-off, but it's canon episode that is also a filler episode.
Yep. Yeah, because otherwise there really hasn't been anything else that's happened.
No, because, I mean, we're coming up on the draft, and it's finally draft month, where everyone's going to start watching Draft Day. Great movie, by the way. And everyone's still playing, fake GM, when, obviously, the night we need Grant here, he's nowhere to be found because of his getting ready for OTAs and then going on road with Oliver Anthony, as you just mentioned.
He's going to do that tour with Oliver Anthony first because it's supposed to end right before OTAs, because OTAs happen in May and all that. So he'll have time to do his little Appalachian Mountain tour right quick.
Mm-hmm. But we need the Baltimore Dynamic Scouting Methods, or Matrix.
Yep. AKA the new version of the Big Black Cock List.
Well, he's supposed to have a new BBC list relatively soon, but I think he is doing wide receivers last or close to the end.
No, he already did. He did wide receivers.
Oh, did he do? Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because then last week he did tight ends, and then Drew got upset because his Michigan homerism was greatly offended.
Oh yeah, his Michigan homer was offended, and then I was trying to stop him from doing all the normal Drew versus Grant versus Will offseason outlandish stuff. But that's a little bit farther off topic. Well, it's on topic because
it's on topic because it's
because
our offseason. What the fuck else do we have to talk about?
We don't have a lot.
So speaking of
which, I wanted to, before you went on with yours, I saw earlier where apparently EDC does astrology based off his scouting methods.
That's right. Yes, that's right. I did see there's an April Fool's thing that the Ravens put on their social media channel. So there you go. Hey man, if the Tear in the Stars can bring you a lover, Tear in the Stars can bring you a draft pick. That's all I'm saying.
When I saw that was hilarious.
Yep.
EDC knows how to go along with these pranks and what the social media team wants to do.
Right. It's actually like when Harbaugh went on and did that video about talking about taking a cruise to London for that game against the Jaguars. Which, funny enough, they played like they just got off a cruise, but that's neither here nor there.
We are not going to relive that, okay?
Nope. I slept for 3 hours, woke up, and watched the first half of that game and said, why did I wake up for this? I'm going back to bed.
See, I got off work, went home, watched the first half, and then went to bed at halftime. Because
I think I got off at like 2:30 in the morning, and then out here the game started at like 5:30. So I was like, all right, I'll sleep for a little bit, wake up and watch it. Actually, no, I overslept. I woke up at 6:30, turned on the game, and I was like, "What the hell just happened?" I was just like, "This is awful." Then he threw the pick. I think it was after the Ramsey pick. I was like, "All right, yeah, I'm done. It's cool. This is not going my way." Because at halftime, I was like, "I'm going back to bed."
Yeah, no, because I was also working third shift that year, and it was just horrible. I was like,
Yep.
this is not worth staying up for.
Hail to the no.
And I think that was the lowest outside of the one of the two 5-11 seasons. I think that was one of the worst games I have ever seen. The two
Yep.
5-11 seasons, completely valid, completely understandable on
Yeah,
why
when you're
things
losing
went
your
that
best
well.
players and your starters on a weekly basis, there ain't much you can do. This is what it is. Especially your quarterback at that point wasn't good enough to cover up those deficiencies. But yeah, that 2017 team was hard to watch.
It
Very,
was
very,
like
very, very bad offensively.
it was both good and bad at the same time.
Yeah.
It's
And the
like
defense would be good for the first 3.5 quarters and find a way to fuck everything up. Just because it was what it was. They spent too much time on the field and now they're getting picked apart because they're not blitzing, or they're blitzing at the wrong time, so now they're getting burned. I think that Bears game was one of the worst games I can remember watching. See that and the Vikings the week after. Speaking of the
going
Vikings,
back and thinking about that season, it was wild because at the Bears game, I actually listened to in the car because I was doing I think I was doing rideshare at the time on the side, and I was just like, why are we losing to the fucking Bears?
Fangio defense. It was the Fangio defense before the Fangio defense got popular again. And then they trade for Khalil Mack, and they had that year, and they're like, man, Fangio should get a chance to be a head coach. And they learned, and the Broncos learned, that's a terrible idea. So then they fire him, and now he's back to being the coordinator again, coordinating defenses to Super Bowls.
There are some, Fangio was a good or is one of those coaches that's you're a good coordinator, but you're a bad head coach.
Like Wade Phillips. I mean, not as
Yes.
good as Wade Phillips was, but yeah, very similar because they could turn around a defense like that when they're motivated anyway. Because the Dolphins' defense in 2023 was mid. He didn't want to be there either. It was a bad pairing.
Yeah, it's got to be a good pairing. Like he was good when he was decent with us as a positional coach. He probably would have been good as a DC with us.
Yeah, I agree.
But obviously at the time it was very much so back and forth with some coaching members, and I don't exactly remember the final details on why he was let go or why he left.
I think he went to go work for because he was on the Mike Nolan staff, right? If I remember correctly. I know eventually he made. I remember he eventually made his way to Stanford to coach with Jim Harbaugh because he was his DC over there. And then once he got to the league, he brought both Greg Roman and Vic Fangio with him to the Niners. And that's when people around here decided to become Niners fans again because there was a time where couldn't find those people. Didn't exist. They were like Chargers fans for a second. But once they start winning, all of a sudden, got the Niner flags out, the gay pride flags out, all this and all that. And just like, we get it, man. We get it. It's 2011. It's 2015. Gay rights are important. And now gay marriage is legal. I get you're happy and proud, but fuck the Niners.
Fuck the Niners. But no,
Fuck the Niners.
yeah, I was looking at his history, special assistant to the head coach and defensive assistant from 6 to 8, and then 2009 linebackers coach. And that was the fallout. I think the fallout with the Flacco ordeal.
Oh, okay. Well, there it is. Either way, yeah, he's one of those dudes. Better position, better coordinator than head coach. Kind of like Josh McDaniels, who's got a coordinator job with the Patriots again. I didn't know Vrabel brought him back in, but
Yeah, no,
it
that
makes sense.
now that is also a good match right there. Vrabel, he was a good coordinator. He transitioned well to a head coach, even though roster building was kind of but then again, the Tennessee Titans have always been that way, at least to
Yeah,
me.
honestly, they're the team that shouldn't have been there in 2019. Their best chance was 2021, and then Ryan Tannehill wasn't good enough, and he turned the ball over 3 times to the Bungles.
Mm-hmm.
But
But having him going to the Patriots and bringing back McDaniel, that is actually a really good pairing as well.
I mean, Drake May's got a chance now. And then they brought over Stephon Diggs. Yeah, he's coming off the ACL tear, but he's better than anyone else they have on their roster. I mean, their receiver core was bad last year. I mean, literally all they had was Demario Douglas and what's his face? I think Kendrick Bourne still. That was it. Kendrick Bourne was coming off an ACL tear too because Polk was bad. He was not good for that team last year. See if that changes this year, but yeah, at least now you have something over there.
Essentially, if they can bring back some of the key Brady Belichick era staff, they can definitely turn that team around.
I
But
mean,
as
yeah,
far as having, because Mike Vrabel is giving a modern Bill Belichick. At least
yeah.
at least that's just how I see it.
It's kind of funny. He'll be the one Belichick disciple that didn't actually come from his coaching tree because he's a disciple of Bill O'Brien's.
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
he'll be the only one that'll have bore fruit. Which I mean, mind you, the Belichick coaching tree and how fruitless it is often talked about. But I think the only coach that might have a worse one off top is Mike Tomlin.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because his staffs, it's nobody. I'm not going to count Bruce Arians because Bruce Arians is a carryover from Bill Cowher.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, he's a longtime coordinator anyway. Then they pushed him out the door for Todd Haley. Nobody.
No. Now, the backtracking to our head coach John Harbaugh, his coaching tree is hit or miss.
It's been decent. I mean, mind you, it's a lot of longtime coordinators getting head coaching jobs, but it's at least decent. I mean, Jim Caldwell was decent with the Lions for that little bit. Then he gets let go, and then they turn to Matt Patricia and become a laughing stock. Then you get Gary Kubiak, longtime coordinator, and Shanahan had a head coaching job with the Texans. He goes to be an offensive coordinator for a year, then the next year goes back to Denver and wins the Super Bowl. So I mean, there's that. But that being said, I guess you can't count him under that. More count him under the Shanahan tree.
Mm-hmm.
But then from there, you got Rex, Chuck Pagano. What else am I missing?
Mikey Mack was the most recent.
True, that's who I was forgetting. Mike Mack, the guy who we all wanted to be the heir apparent. But
yes,
I think that was probably the plan, as it turned out. You got a head job before any of us expected.
Oh no, that was absolutely the plan, but obviously Seattle was just like, "Oh, we're gonna go ahead and interview you and offer you." So
yeah, you are our main target, and we'll give you whatever you want to come on over. We are done with Pete Carroll.
Here is the blank check. Write down what you want.
I mean, the worst thing about that was him telling Trippy, "Oh yeah, I'm coming back," and just lied to his face. It's pretty fucked up of Mike Mack to do.
Well, that's one of those things, though, is say, we're both in the blue collar industry, and say a manufacturer or a company came up to us and be like, here's a blank check. Tell us how much money you want to make including all the standard benefits and your own schedule that you want to work, first priority,
Yep.
would you not take it and leave your other employer?
I would take it, but I'll do it under the caveat. I want to see if my current employer will match. If they don't match the blank check, then obviously I'm yours. Which I would
And I,
doubt anyone would do that
and I
unless
bet you
you,
that's what happened.
yeah, yeah, because otherwise he would wind up being the highest paid coordinator in the league. And if you're gonna do that, might as well just go on to see what you can do in Seattle. So all things considered, because they were a decent team last year, just missed the playoffs.
He
But
didn't do bad for a rookie head coach.
no, not at all. Now he is.
And
They brought in a new offensive coordinator. I think he's under the Shanahan tree, if I remember right. I just forget who it was. Was it Clint Kubiak?
yes.
No. Clint Kubiak went back to the Niners. He's their pass game coordinator.
Yeah, that's
He
right.
brought, he brought someone in under that tree that I can't remember. But so they're running that. They're going to be running that scheme with Darnold, which honestly makes the most sense.
It does.
Darnold struggled in any other system, but once he got over to Kyle and then Kevin KOC, he actually looked like a presentable quarterback for once.
But it's just it takes coaching and development. That's all it really takes.
Yeah, it does.
And as far as going back a little bit with Jim Caldwell, the Lions fucked him over in just about any other team that after he became a head coach and then got fired. He got screwed.
He did, because they have a tendency of doing that to not even just him, but like their notable players. I think the only one they kind of did right by for the most part was Matt Stafford. They at least treated him to a good situation where he was friends with the coach. But Calvin Johnson retired early because he didn't want to play for the Lions anymore. Barry Sanders, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have a history. They have a history of doing this to their players.
It's sad, but
it is.
And Chuck Pagano, I think I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because he was a good coach. He followed in, or he was similar to
John Harbaugh.
John Harbaugh. But
yes, he was.
I'm putting the blame on the Irsay family.
For Ryan Grigson. Because Ryan Grigson single-handedly destroyed Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and that terrible, terrible offensive line that they had.
Yeah, they got him killed. They got him beat up so bad. His wife made him retire. They made him retire before he even hit 30. So, I mean, yeah, Ryan Grigson fucked the pooch on that. Same thing with, and I mean, mind you, Chuck wasn't bad. Like, you're right, Chuck wasn't a bad coach. The only problem was the right head coach for that team wound up being the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals like a year later, which it should have been BA because BA had that team rolling.
Yeah, Bruce Arians was a terrific coach at any team that he was on, and he just was part of that, group of old guys that knew what to do, knew how to treat people, and go from there. But I don't know, man. We look at all these different factors when it comes to promoting in the coaching trees, and John Harbaugh does things really well. There's some things he doesn't do very well, and
Correct.
It makes us all want to throat punch him.
Yep. Which realistically, if you think about it, I mean, the prevailing notion at the time, I mean, we almost wound up with fucking Jason Garrett as our head coach.
Yeah,
and then Belichick steps in and says, "Hey, Steve, call John Harbaugh, see how that goes." And I mean, obviously, that was the better hire. Got fucking Jason Garrett breaking down being an analyst on fucking NBC now. So, yeah.
And I watched some of the bit of the presser for the extension. I know that they are working on contract extensions with Lamar and whatnot. There was another one that we were just talking about before the show. We started doing the show.
Oh, yeah, that's
for the
right.
extension. Anyways, Brandon Ace also commented here saying a lot of people don't really talk about the John Harbaugh tree, and
Yeah,
I mean we
could
just
be
went
worse.
on a tirade on that just a little bit ago with a lot of spacing out and
Yeah,
moving.
yeah,
But I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to him, it's just he's good, bad, all the above.
yeah. He has his issues, just like every other coach in the league does. But you can do a lot worse than John Harbaugh as well. He's not the best coach in the league. I mean, it's Andy Reid, Sean McVay, and everybody else. To be
Right.
real, Dan Campbell's really good too, but Dan Campbell still has to win a Super Bowl.
Mhm.
He has to do it with the Lions first, and after having the best record in the NFC and then collapsing against the commies, that don't look too good on you.
Yeah, that was completely like still trying to figure out what happened there.
Injuries, losing the players they kept losing throughout the season.
Hmm.
Everything came to a head in that game. And then Jared Goff had a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day after getting the hell hit out of him.
That makes a lot of sense. But
Yeah,
anyways,
because shoot,
as far as what we're trying to talk about with the extensions, I know that with the Lamar extension, they're trying to get that done so that we can have a little more cap room and save some money there. Um, I know that they're trying to work on getting the OA and Lindy and Kyle Hamilton extensions going.
the Hamilton one's going to be a lot. It's going to be earth shattering. We already know.
Oh, absolutely.
DB's, yeah, and he's worth every penny. That defense doesn't function without him. Just straight up, it doesn't.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Those few games where Kyle Hamilton got the green dot,
Better,
the defense ran so much smoother.
yes, and part of that too part of that too was him taking on a bigger role with getting the DBs lined up, and Roquan could just kind of focus on the front seven, which it helps when you're trying to get everyone lined up and you're moving Kyle all around. I mean, unless your other two safeties are really, really good, you're gonna have some issues, especially when your other safety is Marcus Williams,
Mm-hmm.
who just
And
never bought into the Zach Ward defense.
no, and that that would lead us into another topic of the coaching tree situation and how Zach Orr has similar characteristics of Wink and Rex, Dean
Yeah,
Pease.
very bold and very brash, but it's funny because the way he runs his defense, he doesn't really call it the way both Rex and fucking Wink called it.
The
Doesn't really blitz much. It's mostly 4-man fronts just going on, but
and,
playing a lot of exotic coverages in the back end and a lot of communication and audibling to someone else's audible.
mhm. The way that I was interpreting the last few weeks was it was like a solid mix of the old heads that we had and Mike Max stuff. Like you're
Yeah,
gonna have your flat, like with what you were just saying, the flashy audibles and taking over someone else's coverages was, the old heads of stuff trying to be fancy. Whereas,
yeah,
Mikey Mac was straight up, do your shit.
yeah. Every now and again, he'd have a real clever nickel blitz off the edge, but for the most part, he played it pretty straight up. A lot of two deep, stop the run with 6 in the box, light boxes, which is why they gave up a good amount on the ground like the years he was here. But that was also by design. If you're gonna try to stop the run with light front, that's tough. It's tough for anyone to do. If you're able to stop the run with 6 in the box, you're gonna win a lot of games.
So
Defensively.
So I think the Lindy extension is not going to be as bad, but
I could
they're
see him
gonna
making 20 mil a year as well. Like I think that's close to the highest paid center in the league contracts. I think it's because it's still Creed Humphrey. I imagine it'll probably eclipse that or come close to it.
well, before Creed it was Ryan Jensen when he went to the Bucks.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember who was the next one, but I know they're working on the Ronnie. They are, we've got Ronnie as a good solid option because we already talked about his extension when that got released.
Yep.
So,
and I mean, oh, okay, that's what it is. Yeah, Creed's making 18 mil a year on average from his last contract. So. I figure Lindy will get close. He might surpass it, might come a little less, but he'll be in that ballpark, I'm sure.
it's going to be probably between 16 and 20 mil average.
Yeah, I can see that. Yep, that would not surprise me. He's
Um,
worth it. He's been really good. Just a matter of what do you want to do with the offensive line, because you have certain pieces that work within certain schemes, and you have other pieces that work better in another scheme, which does not necessarily benefit your center.
and as far as the edge rusher extensions, I mean, we have to figure out what's going to happen with OA because
Yep.
I'm trying to say he's. How do I word this correctly? You remember how
he's good, but he's a complementary piece.
Yes.
He's not an alpha pass rusher, which, mind you, alpha pass rushers, as we're seeing, are getting paid ridiculous money. So if you're like to sign a Max Crosby or a Myles Garrett or eventually a Micah Parsons, you're gonna have to pony up 30+ mil a year, close to 40. Which the OA contract might be in the 20s, low 20s, maybe late teens.
OA is giving Yannick from back in the 21 season when we traded for him.
Yeah.
Where he was good. He wasn't flashy. He didn't do the things that a normal edge rusher would do in that scheme. He did well beforehand, really, really well beforehand. But that was because, the schemes was, he was excelling in those. But whereas
that Jaguars scheme, Yannick was allowed to just pin his ears back and not worry about run defense. Our scheme, they care about the edge rushers setting the edge on the run game.
Exactly. So that way, if a guard comes and tries to trap you, then you can just be ready to stop the hit and stop the bounce out.
Yep.
And so that's where I kind of see OA at right now. He is the intangibles or you're setting the edge, you're making the tackles when needed, but you're not being flashy.
He's the kind of dude who would really benefit from having an A pass rusher on the other side of him. He's more in the Ryan Kerrigan kind of vein, or the, I guess, Ray Edwards from the Vikings back in the day, opposite Jared Allen. That's more Adolfo way. Which again, he's a good player, just not a dominant player.
And if we'll never have like a Suggs and Doomerville duo again.
No, it's highly unlikely unless one, you pick in the top 10 and pick up one, and then you wind up really lucking out later in the draft, happen to find a dude that everyone else overlooked, and then you pair the two of them together and they're just dominating. Like the Browns sucking for so long, and now they're more than likely going to have Myles Garrett and Abdul Carter rushing off the edge on the same defensive line. I mean, that's an exception. That being said, they've also been terrible, which is really the only way to get a dude like him. Unless you're going to trade up a slew of draft picks to go up, multiple firsts and all this and all that.
But and then Ojabo's not far behind as well. And we're still trying to figure out what's going on with him because obviously he was going to be like top 10 in that same draft as Lindy and Hamilton. But
if he had not popped his Achilles, he might have been the pick at pick 14. Although most likely probably still been Kyle Hamilton with the way EDC talks about him, and Marlon would talk about EDC talking about him on his little pod or whatever. How enamored he was with Kyle Hamilton. But Ojabo would have been in the conversation at pick 14 had he not torn his Achilles. So the downside for him, he got screwed when it comes to injuries. It's a lot to try to come back from an Achilles tear. So it's like the first, like his rookie year is a wash. That's fine. The year after, I'm willing to say, yeah, it's a wash because typically you're not the same the year after coming off an ACL tear or an Achilles. It's last year where you're like, damn, seeing him as a healthy scratch because he's not producing enough in practice to really go out there and play the game. You're like, I mean, this is it. Either you show something this year or you're going to be finding a new line of work. Now, obviously, it's not a common theme to say, or not a popular thing to say on this podcast, given Drew loving the maize and blue and Will willing to stand because so many dumbass Ravens fans really, really wanted George Pickens, who is fine. He's talented, but he doesn't do also talented dude, but he's also retarded. Makes spectacular incompletions.
Everyone that you were just talking about is, I mean, they're dumb, retarded, so on and so forth. But it's just like when you get past the homerism, because I mean, I can't really say much because I'm in a fan, or the college fan bases that I'm associated with are, rivals of Michigan. But I can see the value in Ojabo though.
Yeah, I didn't hate the pick at the time, and I still don't hate the pick. I mean, you're taking the chance on someone's talent and bouncing back from a serious injury. Like, it's no fault of his own that he hasn't panned out. It's just bad luck.
I feel like last season was his sophomore slump.
Yeah, if you can call it a slump, because, I mean, what we've seen of him on the field, I mean, he's not the same. He's not the same dude he was at college. And that's okay, because, I mean, he was raw coming out. He was raw coming out of school, so you knew he's going to be kind of a project in that, but you're banking on the athleticism. When you lose the athleticism on the Achilles, you're not able to get the same get off that you had before. It's tough. It's very, very tough.
He did well in his rookie season when he did have the opportunity to go or get some playing time, but that opportunity
once he was healthy enough to go,
once he was healthy enough to go. But at the same time, that was essentially a throwaway game.
Yes, it was. Yes, Drew, we are still alive.
I just responded to him in our little group chat.
Cool.
But it's with the Ojabo situation, and if Drew manages to get here before we move on to our off topic, he can go ahead and give his input. But
I mean, we know he's going to say if like a Hall of Fame aim pace on a per snap basis. Problem with that argument is it doesn't hold water when you're a healthy scratch. If you're injured, it's different. When you're just a healthy scratch, well, that's oof. that means you're not good enough. You're not one of the 40 good. You're not one of the top 46 players on the roster.
A deeper thing with those healthy scratches, though.
Can be. You're right. It can be.
I think there is definitely something where, I don't know, maybe the training staff is like, maybe you're not 100% yet.
Which would be wild. I mean, it's possible.
Like,
that wouldn't be would.
Like, say he's at 85 or 90%. Like, he's able to get on the field, practice, suit up, and get a couple reps in here and there. But they're like, be careful on it.
Right. That's a fair point. And
So
but that being said, I'm not willing. I'm also, even with everything I just said, I'm not willing to completely throw the book out on him this year. This is the last year of his rookie deal, and if there's any time for a pass rusher to show what he can do in the league, it's the last year of a contract where you can go either get paid by the team or go get paid by somebody else, which wouldn't be crazy if he got paid by the Seahawks to go play for Mike Mack, scheme he's already familiar with.
We've seen this time in, time out with pass rushers. I mean,
Zadarius Smith, Matt Judon. You can keep going and on.
Exactly. And Drew finally arrives without Raul.
Made up a rumor that you went off with that gay dude who fucking sexually harasses you in the chat.
Sure. We'll go with that.
There you go.
Anyways, we were just we were going over.
Will is on his little ayahuasca trip, and I joined him his little Aaron Rodgers blackout retreat.
Oh,
the fuck he does every
darkness retreat.
Yeah. So the fuck's Grant?
Hippie bullshit. Hey, where the fuck is Grant?
Because he's got plenty of time. I mean, we were going to be wrapping up here relatively soon, but we were
yellow word.
Yeah.
So, Drew, before we get out of here, and the off chance he doesn't come, your thoughts on the Harbaugh extension? People getting pissed off about it and all this and that.
I mean, it was going to happen regardless. Like the second that they announced the Monken extension, it was just a matter of time until they extended Harbaugh. Your only, hope if you're like a anti-Harbaugh person was that, he was going to retire after the year. And so that the only reason that he wasn't getting extended was that there was some kind of, like fucking handshake deal in place that he wasn't going, that, he was going to coach out this year and then they were going to pick a successor. But there was no planet where he wasn't coming back. We have a very stupid fan base, obviously, who have, gaslit themselves into thinking that their opinions matter and that they're, smarter than everybody else and that they could run the team better than everybody else. And the reality is that, John Harbaugh is our head coach. Personally, I am not a huge Harbaugh guy. I think that you probably should have last year pushed him to a front office role and pushed Mike forward to the job, to the head coaching job.
Agreed.
You didn't do that though. That ship sailed. So like, I can't really sit here and cry about that not happening because you just sound stupid and stuck in the past. And so the issue now is that like the Ravens are a risk-averse franchise. When they do things, it's very clear that they're looking for, stability and predictable outcomes. And so if you get rid of John Harbaugh and you go to replace him with another head coach, like there's risk involved there. What we are with John Harbaugh as the head coach. That they're going to win, 10, 11, 12, 13 games maybe. That they're going to be in the mix in the playoffs, and I just don't know if the team feels that like replacing John pushes them over the edge. I think that might have been the right move. I think that we're kind of stagnant and we're kind of stuck in the same spot, and we're kind of, like I feel like John is almost impeding our progress. But if you bring in a new head coach, I don't know if you stay still. Maybe you miss, maybe you hire the wrong person, and it affects us in the other direction. So I get why they extended him. I don't, like I said, I'm not a really huge Harbaugh guy. I'm not going to sit here and fucking cry about it, though, online. Like, there are some people who do, so.
Yeah, we just had a pretty decent conversation about that a little bit earlier, and then we
I think he's a good coach. I mean, he's a good coach, not necessarily a great coach. That being said,
if you look at his entire body of work, he is a
borderline Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, really, a second ring is guaranteeing him to get into the Hall of Fame. I think if you look at it right now, like, you're going to have a tough time not saying that at some point he makes it into the Hall of Fame. And my beef with him is that he, I think the game has kind of passed him by. I think that some of his decision-making and just the way that he deals with our current roster, it doesn't always mesh. I think that he's more built for you don't have a superstar quarterback. You kind of have a bunch of veteran players who are, I don't want to say like past their prime, but are, getting towards the end of their usefulness. And he's really good at kind of extending that usefulness. I forget who I was arguing with Harbaugh, or not arguing, but like talking about Harbaugh with online. But like, Harbaugh is the guy that you give a car that has, 100,000 miles, and most normal people can maybe only get 125,000 miles out of that car before it breaks down and isn't useful anymore. And Harbaugh can get that car to 200,000 miles. But you can't give Harbaugh a brand new car and expect him to, like, nurture it and make it grow. Like, he's not great with rookies. He's not great with guys who don't come in, as a finished product. He's not a huge development guy. So, I don't know. Like, I kind of get, like I said, I get when people say he's a good head coach, he's a Hall of Fame coach. Like, you're right, he is. Like, if you say that John Harbaugh is a terrible head coach and he's some fucking bum, like, you're just stupid and you're being reactionary for the internet. But
they're getting emotional.
Right. If your argument is more nuanced and that he's not the right guy for the job right now, like, I can get behind that. So I assume that you two landed more in that side of the argument, that like he is, there are probably better options than Harbaugh out there. I don't really know what they are. And so therefore, not going into the unknown and not taking the risk might have been the right move.
We kind of came up with, at this current line of head coaches, that he's kind of like middle upper of the pack.
Like, I think he's a top 10 coach, and he's like closer to 10 than he is to 5. I would say personally.
So I mean, once you get past like Reed, McVay, Tomlin is an interesting one to have a conversation, because
they're about
like
the same dude.
Yeah, they pretty much are the same guy. I think that Tomlin is a little bit better at, I don't know, like blood magic is the right word, but like making something out of nothing. But again,
he has a similar thing with working, really making veteran rosters work and getting the most out of them. Kind of like John in that aspect. Obviously, Tomlin hasn't had a losing season, but
yeah, and Tomlin does a little bit better with wide receivers and pass rushers. In terms of like kind of like developing nobodies there, whereas we don't really do a good job at all at wide receiver, and I think that pass rushers take a little bit longer to come around in in Sean's world. But yeah, they're comparable. But I feel like once you get past like the really elite guys, like John is in that next tier down, and if you're gonna say that he's 9th, whatever, but you could also say that he's 5th, and I don't know if there's really that much of a gap between that next group of guys.
Agreed. That's the biggest thing.
If we're going that pyramid level, like, he's not at the top, but he's like in that second row from the top.
Yeah, as like a general note, like I've started to hate top 10 lists because of this exact thing of people get so bogged down in like, well, this guy's 7th, and you're stupid if you don't agree that he's 7th. And it's like, I don't know, like he's that next tier. Like Zay Flowers was the one that I've kind of like come to this realization about, is that people are like, oh, he's not a top 10 wide receiver. Zay Flowers is definitely not on like the, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase level when you're looking at like elite wide receivers. But is it really that crazy to say that Zay Flowers is the 7th best wide receiver? Because like the gap between him and, I don't know, like an aging Tyreek Hill, like, is it really that big anymore? You know what I mean? So, like, if your personal preference is that you'd rather have, I don't fucking know, like Amon-Ra St. Brown or somebody like that, then cool, because I don't really have an issue with you putting Brown ahead of Zay, but if somebody prefers Zay, it's also really not that crazy either. So I've
There's a
liked this,
lot of
like
good receivers out there too. So I mean, it
yeah, or
all
like
just kind of jumbled
Malik
together.
Neighbors. Again,
Yeah,
like, is it really that crazy to say that Zay's better than Malik Neighbors? No, but is it really that crazy to say that Neighbors is better than Zay? Not really. So I
no,
don't know. You're kind of in that weird spot. So I like the tiered approach now. Of that, you're like, you have these 4 or 5 guys that are like really elite at every position, and
Mhm.
then you have the next 10 guys underneath them, and you could really make an argument for a lot of them that it's just a personal preference thing at that point.
And then outside of the extension, John Harbaugh extension, we were kind of getting into like the takeaways from the presser, the extensions. We didn't touch base on the Tucker situation because obviously everyone knows that
they're letting the league
we are waiting
do
on
what
the
it
league to
does.
make their decision.
So
Um,
what I find, I don't know if like irritating about that is the right word, but you're getting to the point now where is it worth it? You know what I mean, to wait on the league? Like, is it? I assume, again, Will and I talked about this at length, but like, I assume the Ravens' philosophy here is that they don't want Justin Tucker anymore, that they're waiting for the league findings because they want to void his contract and they want to save, I don't know what the number is, like $6 million left on his
I
contract. And they
think
don't
it's
want,
like five or somewhere between 5 and 7.
yeah, and so they want to void his contract and take all of that money off the cap and not eat any kind of dead cap. Whereas, like,
Mm-hmm.
you can cut him with a post June 1st designation right now and save $4 million. And like, does that $2 million really matter that much to you? I don't know. I
In
mean,
grand scheme of things, I'm not a 100% math genius. That's not in my wheelhouse. But I would like to say that it would probably give them a little more flexibility when it comes to veteran signings or some of these rookie deals that are coming in.
yeah, and so like you can make a lot of cap maneuvers and create that $2 million to me. So if that $2 million is really make or break for you, I'd rather just not have Justin Tucker on the roster. And I know Harbaugh mentioned kickers specifically today
Mm-hmm.
during his press conference. So like, I think they're preparing for a world without Justin Tucker, and I think they're sort of sitting on their hands and waiting for the league to give them, cause to void his contract for business reasons. I'm okay with it. Again, I think he's a fucking scumbag, and we can argue till we're blue in the face as to whether he's guilty or not. But like, there's been enough people that have come forward and told the same story about him that it's more than one, and therefore it's a pattern of behavior, and I'm not really comfortable having him around on the team. So I think he's gone. And I don't know. Now I'm kind of like in this weird spot with Mark Andrews of like he might be back, and I might have to prepare myself for a world where I got to watch that asshole suit up on Sundays for the Ravens. My understanding is that the Ravens wanted a 3rd-round pick back for him, and nobody was close to willing to meet that price. I also wonder if paying that extra $4 million that they paid for that roster bonus. I know it's very un-Ravens like to pay that and then get rid of the guy and have that $4 million on your cap. But I also think that if you get closer to draft night or even during the draft, that somebody might have had their heart set on Loveland or Warren, and they're not going to get him. And is Mark Andrews better than the guy that you're going to draft after them? Is he better than that next guy? And is he worth taking that gamble on now? I don't know. So, he could definitely be a draft day trade. I wouldn't rule that out.
Will do
but
desperate things on draft night.
Right. And
Yeah,
so
I can totally see it.
yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they moved him. I want them to move him, but I'm kind of now like, I don't know. Just the way that they talk about Mark Andrews now, I'm not sure if he's actually gone, which sort of sucks. I was pretty convinced that he was gone, but like the longer that passes before a deal gets made, the less I think that one is going to happen. So I don't know about that.
The only silver lining with him returning, if he does indeed return, if he's not traded on draft night, is it's going to make the Charlie Kohler contract very, very, very cheap.
Yes, that is also one thing.
But does Charlie Kohler is kind of like fuck you guys and go somewhere else? I don't know.
That's fair too, because he's like, I want an opportunity.
And same thing with Isaiah Likely.
Then
yeah,
fuck off.
Yeah, like if you're Isaiah Likely, you think you're a tight end one, and how much longer are you staying here to sit behind Mark Andrews? I have no idea. So it could be. It's great from a sense of you're limiting their production. So in theory, you should be limiting their contracts. I'm just not sure it works out like that in reality. So
yeah, it's fair because I mean they're all free agents after this year, so it's a matter of where do you want to go after this season.
Yeah, do they harbor some kind of ill will towards the Ravens for burying them on the depth chart behind Mark Andrews, or not? I guess is really what that would boil down to.
I think with the whole Mark Andrews thing, as of lately, like the end of season presser, obviously they were making the notes of, hey, you've done well for us, but you're gone. Now it's one of those things where I think they're kind of hyping him up to other teams and saying nice things to the media, be like, yeah, we're expecting to see him here, but on draft night, we're going to trade his ass.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but like Mark Andrews is a relic of the Greg Roman offense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like he is that piece that is, the last remaining vestige of an offense that we're trying to move on from. And I don't think he is particularly needed or particularly works well with what we're trying to do currently. I feel like that money and that, snap share, whatever the fuck you want to call it, I think is better served being given to Isaiah Likely, and that $7 million is better to be spent elsewhere. I don't know if that's how the Ravens feel. And I think that it comes with a risk thing, and just the way that this organization runs itself is that I feel like sometimes they'd rather stick with what they know than sort of take that gamble and take that leap. And so, during the regular season, Mark Andrews is a top 3, 4, 5 tight end in the NFL. You know that he's going to give you, last year the targets were down. In the beginning of the year, he was clearly still feeling the effects of the injury from the year before and had that car accident that kind of gave him like a weird start to the year. And so, he sort of came on as the year went on, and he scored 11 touchdowns. And again, that's like Lamar's security blanket. And so they almost feel comfortable with that idea. But my issue is that you're no longer playing for the regular season anymore. I really don't care that Mark Andrews has 11 touchdowns in the regular season. Last year, I care about winning a Super Bowl. And I think he inhibits your ability to do that with how bad he is in the playoffs. But maybe, this is the year that they figure out, hey, Mark's not the guy in the playoffs. Let's feed the ball to Isaiah. I also just think that it's kind of weird to have a guy that's your regular season specialist, and then you just ignore him in the playoffs. So I don't know.
At this point, from a historical standpoint, if you remember the name Jackie Smith, he's Jackie Smith. Tight end for the Cardinals for a long, long time, multiple Pro Bowler. He goes to a good team, the Dallas Cowboys, has a chance to score a touchdown in the playoffs. Not in the playoffs, but in the Super Bowl. And he has an egregious drop, just like Mark Andrews had. And they lose the Super Bowl 13 to the Steelers. And that's all anyone remembers him as. Still a Hall of Fame player. Still good in his day, but choke artist. That's what Mark Andrews is.
And so it's you're paying him. I mean, he's on the cap for $17 million for us or something like that, some fucking crazy number. And it's almost weird to be oh yeah, I'm going to pay him that $17 million to get us through the regular season, but then we're going to go in with the real winning tight end here, Isaiah Likely, in the playoffs, and like tailor our offense to him. I think that's kind of like conceptually doesn't make sense. I feel like you pay top tier tight end. If you're going to pay somebody top tier tight end money, you expect for them to do something in the playoffs, and he's just continually proven he's not capable of that. So,
and he's approaching 32, so not 32, but he's approaching 30. So at this point,
he's got diabetes. I know that like that's going to have to affect him at some point in his career. And so, like, is he going to hit his prime earlier? People blame the diabetes for why he can't play in the cold in the playoffs. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of all set with him, but I feel like I'm going to have to like eat my words there, and that he'll be back, which sucks, but it is what it is.
Yep.
So that's
yeah, and we were supposed to have Grant here for a draft list. I don't
he
remember.
did not show up.
Yeah.
So.
We gave him ample time to get home, and get on here, but it is what it is.
We had a slight, I don't want to say emergency. No, so nothing's wrong. It was just lost track of time because things took longer than they should have. But I mean, that's really all that's left in the offseason for us as a draft at this point, because I don't think you're really going to get much in terms of signings. Thank fucking God Calais Campbell signed somewhere else.
We were going to roast you if he came back.
No, I'm going to roast you. I was just going to let you have the floor and just hope you were driving. So you just get really pissed.
I would have been fucking livid. I hate the retread idea in general. I think that our fans get nostalgic and tied to certain players for God knows what fucking reason. Like, there was nothing good about Calais Campbell being here. And I don't get where this comes from of like, I get it.
He was a run stuffer.
Yeah,
he's
but
a really good run stuffer.
You acquired him to be a pass rusher. You know what I mean? Like, we brought him in to put up sack numbers, and he just fucking didn't. And whatever, like you can make the Brandon Williams argument with him of like, his contribution to the team was outside of the stat sheet, and he played a really meaningful position and blah, blah, blah. Like, cool, whatever. I'm not going to fucking argue with you on that. That guy, every year that he was here ended in a Lamar injury.
That is true.
Rumors and whisperings behind the scenes that he was one of the guys that was pushing this whole, Lamar should stop being a pussy and play shit that was coming out in the media. I have no idea how true that is, but like, it also kind of tracks that he's this like asshole who like portrays him, who thinks he's like a fucking leader, and he didn't lead us to shit. So like, goodbye. Like, have fun somewhere else. I'm not really interested in having you here, personally.
He went back home to the Cardinals, the team that drafted him.
Yeah, he was really good for the Cardinals for a while. He was really fucking good for the Jags. And then he came here and he wasn't that guy. And then he went to Miami, and the rumor is that like Miami had a deal in place to send him to us during the trade deadline, and Mike McDaniel nixed it. I don't know how much I buy that. I've heard it from a few people. I also don't think he was like pushing us over the edge last year, so I really don't care. It's the same thing with the people who are obsessed with like, oh, let's go sign Zadarius Smith or let's go sign Matt Judon. Like, yeah, cool. They both had success here at some point, but I'm not bending over backwards to bring in some fucking guy who, was good here 10 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever the fucking amount of time was. Like, it is what it is. Like, it happened. They're gone, and I don't want to pay for nostalgia anymore. I want to take a step forward.
Well, then there's no reason to bring back Matt Judon, even with the Patriots. Sure, he put up 15 sacks in the season,
but he didn't do shit in January.
Bad teams.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is he was a stat.
Any big game, he just disappeared.
Right. I mean, he never did anything in the playoffs. Even for us, he was he's more of the same of what we have of. He was more of a sidekick than like the guy. He put up great numbers when Suggs was here, and then Suggs left, and we franchise tagged Judon, and he really he wasn't that guy. Again, same thing with Darius Smith. Like, didn't really do much here, had that great year as kind of like a complimentary pass rusher, went and got paid, and he's put up some numbers elsewhere, but he's always had, other elite talent to bounce off of. Like,
Well,
he's
I mean,
always
with the Packers, he was the dude. I mean, he was better than
Preston Smith. I mean, Preston Smith was putting up numbers too, so it wasn't like it was just
Nah, it wasn't just
Za'Darius.
him.
And they had fucking Michigan kid. Why am I drawing a blank?
Rashawn Gary, who they actually just paid him too. Recently.
Yeah, they just paid him. They had some decent guys on that defensive line, so like it was never just Za'Darius. I think he put up some decent numbers in Cleveland, but again, he's lined up next to across from Myles Garrett there. The Lions kind of had a pretty good scheme that he stepped into that was, creating guys to put up numbers. He was no Aiden Hutchinson, obviously. And like you saw, they lost in the playoffs. Like he wasn't able to come in and be that key pass rusher and really fill Aiden Hutchinson's shoes. So I don't know. It's another guy that, people are fucking obsessed with. And I'm like, yeah, no thanks. I mean, if he's coming here for vet minimum, whatever, but like, I feel like people want to bring him in and that they're going to hype him up as some kind of like premier pass rush acquisition. And he's just not that. That guy doesn't exist on the market anymore.
You're absolutely right about that.
Like, go get a Von Miller. Again, cool. Like, Von Miller had great numbers, and he was a part of that great defense on the Broncos, and he's put up okay numbers when he's actually played for the Bills. But, like, if you're bringing in Von Miller, it's to play a complementary role. Like, you're not bringing in him to be your key pass rusher. And I think we talked about this last week with Yuri, but, like, the biggest issue with the Ravens pass rush is that they don't have that guy. That it's all a bunch of sidekicks that are, putting up good coverage sack numbers, and they have decent sack numbers. But, like, if you're making an acquisition there, you're either just padding depth or you have to really go get somebody in the draft that's going to be like a day one impact guy. And, because I don't think that impact guy is just floating around out there anymore. It's too late in the offseason.
Draft 2 pass rushers this particular draft because, 3 of the 4 backers that you have on your roster are going to be free agents.
Right, and I'm not
Robinson.
I'm not paying Owe. Grant's buddy Greg Russo has pretty much nailed that point home for me. I am not paying Owe $20 million a year if I'm the Ravens. Like, I just don't see the upside to that at all. I don't think that you'll ever get anywhere near that production out of Owe. So, you basically have to like chalk him up for walking, getting paid somewhere else, and being a comp pick in a couple of years. Kyle Van Noy, again, like an aging guy. Was he 34 now, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. How much longer does he want to play? How much does he have left in the tank?
Yeah, I mean, he's already won a couple rings. And again, he's never really going to be that guy pass rush wise. So it's not like you're going to, lock him up and pay him $25 million a year and he's going to put up 12 sacks every year. Like, he's kind of meant to be your complimentary guy. I think very highly of David Ajabo, but again, he hasn't shown that he could be that guy because they won't give him snaps and they're stymieing a Hall of Fame career on a per snap basis. But again, that's more of a
healthy scratch.
Well,
healthy scratch.
I mean, you're keeping this, this guy at bay until he's gonna, blow up and be a defensive player of the year this year, go somewhere else and get paid. Like, that just seems to be the Ravens' way with pass rushers. So,
defensive player of the year.
Yeah, if I say it enough times, maybe it'll actually happen. So, I'm
rooting for it.
Yeah, and you really, to your point, like, you don't have really anybody under contract after next year, or after this year, I guess. Like, they're all done after this year. So,
yep,
you kind of have to go get somebody in the draft. Mike Green has got some character red flags with the whole, 2 sexual assault things, and that's why he was dismissed from whatever school. I think it was Virginia Tech or Virginia. I don't remember that he went to, and then he ended up going to Marshall. And that kid's a fucking monster. Like, that's a guy that you take in the first round. I think he comes in and makes an immediate impact. So I'd happily take him here. And, the other one is the Ezaraku kid from BC.
Boston College.
Yeah, just fucking big pass rush win rate guy. Puts up great numbers too, but like, again, wins his one-on-one matchups and wins them quick. And that's exactly what we're missing on the defense. I think that's a guy that, could come in. I don't know where he gets drafted though. So like I don't know if he's actually there at 27. It'd be great if he was there at 27. I don't know if he actually falls that far or not. Because I think after those two, you're looking at like James Pierce Jr. and other people like that. And I don't really know if like I mean again, I think that James Pierce Jr. would be fine. I think Shamar Stewart would be fine. Or Scroton or whatever the fucking other Texas A&M kid is. Like I think they'd be good picks, but I think that they're a little bit more developmental, and I don't think that they're guys that step in and make an immediate impact day one. Or Kennard is another guy that I know Grant's throwing around that he's more of a like second, third round pick type guy. And again, I'd be very happy with any of those guys, but they're not stepping in and making an immediate impact starting wise. So
No.
You're in a weird spot with that. Scott Greenlee. What about CJ Mosley for depth at linebacker? Like, yeah, I'd be again. Like I said, I don't love retreads. If CJ Mosley is coming here on a veteran minimum deal and he's kind of your inside linebacker, pencils in as your inside linebacker number 2, and maybe Trenton Simpson takes his job, like I'd live with that. That would be fine. I wouldn't really be opposed to that. If he makes Roquan's life easier in some manner, then sure, cool. But I'm not expecting to sign him to, make like a major impact on the team. So,
and along with that, speaking of Trenton Simpson, that was another bit or kind of a decent point that we talked about a little bit earlier with taking the step forward, because I know that last season
he
Trenton
sucked.
We agreed.
I thought he was going to be a guy last year. Isaiah Simmons is another guy out on the market, by the way, very similar profile to Trenton Simpson, where it's kind of this like athletic freak who played some safety in college, plays more linebacker in the NFL, big athletic guy. Like, I love the idea of Trenton Simpson. Trenton Simpson's kind of like Daniel Flaley to me, of like you look at a guy at the linebacker position with that size and that speed, and you're almost like, he's got to fucking figure it out, right? Like, you look at Daniel Flaley, he's, 6'8", 400 pounds. Like, in theory, somebody should be able to teach him how to block people. But then you watch last year and you watch Flaley start at right guard, and you're kind of like, like this guy's big and a waste of space for nothing. You know what I mean? Like, he can't pull and he can't do his job. So I think Simpson is kind of in the same boat of like, show me something.
Exactly. But the thing is, Simpson, I think, kind of overtook or stepped over the boundaries or stepped over the line, and instead of following the play, kind of went over and did his own thing or misread assignments.
Very early Patrick Queen-esque, of like a guy who is almost too athletic for his own good. It causes him to, take bad angles and overrun plays.
And
which
it affected Roquan to where he couldn't make the plays that he needed to make, and looked like the fat lard we all thought he was.
I'm also very open to the idea of blaming that all on Marcus Williams, and that it was a Marcus Williams issue, and that the reason why Trenton Simpson looked so bad is because the back end of our defense was so bad, and it kind of just all escalated and compiled on itself. I'm cool with that being the explanation if there is some kind of, big step forward from Trenton Simpson this year. But I don't think you can go into the year now expecting Trenton Simpson to be your guy as a starter. So there's definitely got to be some kind of depth signing there, or some kind of, draft capital spent on the inside linebacker position. Again, wouldn't hate it, but I don't know. To me, you paid Roquan up.
Certain retreads need to not happen. Some retreads can be brought in just to, as like we all said, depth pieces.
Yeah, and as long as that's the, I don't know if goal is the right word, but if you're bringing in, CJ Mosley to maybe be your second inside linebacker, and, you're maybe expecting him to contribute in a much smaller role than he did when he was here previously, I'm okay with that. My fear to signing CJ Mosley is that, Kevin Ostrich Wiener is going to post, fucking clips from like that interception to, Seal winning the division in 2018, or, all the other good shit that he did, and be like, oh, Ravens got a dog with this guy. Like, No, he's not him anymore. That's not who CJ Mosley is anymore. As long as the team's okay with that too and understands that like that's not who they're bringing in anymore, then I'm cool with it. I don't really trust Harbaugh though. With that is also kind of my
That dude Ostrich Wiener's a fucking blasphemer.
yeah.
He started
I
fucking
can't.
talking about tacos, and he's white people tacos. It's fucking blasphemy.
Well, and again, I don't know how much of it is how he actually feels and how much of it is like a fucking, I don't know, like a bit is the right word, where just anytime the Ravens sign somebody, it's let's pull up a 6-year-old highlight. He did it with fucking Awuzie when we signed him and was posting things with like, from like 2018. It's like, dude, it's 2025. Like let's be serious adults for a minute. Let's not have this dumb fucking idea of like the guy's gonna come in and just relive his glory days from 7 years ago. Like it's just not gonna fucking happen.
I think it's with that whole thing. I think it's just part of the bit. Run that thing and just run with it. But yeah,
I mean, he posted Bo Braid highlights from fucking high school, like when we drafted him, and I'm like, come on, man, like let's not be those people. Let's not do that. I'm sure he posted like rookie year highlights from DeAndre Hopkins, being like, "This is who the Ravens just got." It's like, just stop. Like the problem with it might be a bit for him, but our fans are fucking dumb enough to like fall for that.
I completely agree that they're
and so
enough.
like I'm almost blaming him for our fans. Like he's feeding the stupid people. You know what I mean? He's hyping up the morons.
Don't feed raccoons.
There are people who exist on Twitter who are like dead set convinced that EDC is some terrible GM and that John Harbaugh is this like awful human being who's just totally gonna like kill our franchise. And I'm just like, there's rational discussions to be had about EDC and what separates him from the best GM in the league. Because I don't think he's the best GM in the NFL, but I think he's very good at his job. And I think that he has done, I don't want to say a phenomenal job with this roster because I think some of the mistakes that he's fixed are self-inflicted wounds. So, whatever. He was also a brand new GM at that point. I think that mistakes have been made in the draft and have put us in the position that we're in now. But I think he's done as good of a job as anybody at taking the current roster that we have or, the current cap situation that we have and putting together the best roster that he can year after year. That doesn't mean he's without flaws and that doesn't mean he's above criticism. But to take that from having a rational conversation about the mistakes EDC has made to this guy fucking sucks, let's fire him. Like, you got to be some kind of fucking moron to have that thought process. I mean, I was arguing with one of them today. It's the typical Ravens dipshit who, like, hypes himself up on 3 things that he got right and is like, well, now I'm a fucking genius because I thought Brandon Stevens sucked at football. And so, EDC is a terrorist and fire John Harbaugh and I could, I'm smarter than everybody else. And you get this like weird ass higher opinion of yourself where you think like what you say matters. I promise you, nobody from the Ravens is reading any of our tweets being like, fuck yeah, that guy's intelligent. Let's do what the fuck he thinks. Like nobody cares to that extent. So I don't know. I feel like we're in this like weird spot. Just moving forward with this team of like, there are some minor holes to be filled. Well, there are some, in my book, there's some major holes to be filled that I don't think we're actually looking to fill. I don't think we're looking for a new right guard. I think we should be looking for a new right guard.
Our starting right guard is Ben Cleveland.
I would love that, but I just...
It's not realistically going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, like we're stuck with Daniel Falele, and they're going to extend him, and he's going to be like our right guard for all of eternity, and he just doesn't fit the offensive scheme that we want to run. But like he's a Harbaugh guy, and that's again to get back to the Harbaugh discussion. Like that's my biggest gripe with Harbaugh is that he just doesn't seem to want to like progress with Lamar. Like he's not built for running a team that is Lamar Jackson centric. He's built for running a team that has a Joe Flacco type guy under center and has an aging defense, and it just doesn't I think he kind of stunts progress, but I think that you could win with Harbaugh if he would get away from this having his guys and letting his guys make mistakes. Because Ben Clear, or Daniel Flaley being in over Ben Cleveland is going to cost you 1 or 2 football games a year, I think.
Yep.
And he just won't pull the trigger on that. I think we said it last week. I don't think without Dean Pease coming in that Marcus Williams gets benched because I think Harbaugh rides with Marcus Williams there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's what would have stopped us from winning any playoff games is if you had fucking Marcus Williams out there. So I don't know. I'd love to see. I just hope that like this year, maybe John is kind of like, fuck it, I'm getting towards the end of my career. I really want another ring, and is going to take outside input from his coaching staff, not from us on the internet, on who should be starting in certain places.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, I feel like we're just playing a game of like, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? Like it would be, there's a bunch of guys in the draft that we could take that are all, again, the reason why that they're being talked about as first round picks in the NFL draft is that, they're top 30 available human beings to play football. So they're clearly good football players. So I'm curious to see the direction that this team goes and kind of what they do with the draft picks. And then I guess we kind of go from there. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be really helpful if we had, a fucking draft expert on here to give us a list of players that we could, talk about and break down. But I guess Grant's a little too busy for us.
That's facts, unfortunately. He's, like I said, he's getting ready to go be a roadie for Oliver Anthony for this month, and he's got OTAs coming up. So Grant's season seems to be coming to fruition soon. So
yeah, I mean, is Grant vying for that inside linebacker job? So would he be mad at us talking about CJ Mosley, potentially taking it?
I think he's trying to get in as an outside linebacker. He told me he's trying to be the next Brooks Reed. So take that for what you will. But
yeah, good luck. Good luck with that.
Yep. Anywho, that's going to do it for this week. Hopefully next week won't be a spinoff episode featuring Drew. We'll be back to discuss this, that, and the other. Birds are not real. It's it's time for me to die.
See you.